Learning Objective 4 addresses two new short-term decisions that sometimes we have to make in our organizations, and the first one of those is often referred to as a make or buy decision. This is called outsourcing, and then we're going to look at processing further or joint and split off cost in a second type of decision. Let's begin with outsourcing or the make or buy decision in an organization. Okay, so we have two questions that we're looking at overall. The first, as I mentioned, is should we outsource a component of a finished product, allow someone else to make a casing or someone else to make the battery for our smart tab, or should we continue to make it ourselves? That's why this is called, the outsourcing is often called a make or buy decision. And then we're also going to look at, do we continue to process that leather into do we continue to process our cattle into leather and hides, or do we simply stop at the meat point? And so we have to determine, is it cost beneficial, and are we generating additional profits that are sufficient enough for us to continue the process? Okay, as I mentioned, we'll begin with outsourcing. So we want to consider opportunity cost here. We haven't looked at these yet. We're looking at are there costs, okay, that we could take advantage of, or are there revenues that we are missing as a result of a certain decision? So when we're trying to decide whether to outsource, first of all, we want to know, how do our variable costs for manufacturing this case, the material, the labor, the overhead, how do they compare with the price that we would spend if we simply purchased it from someone else or outsourced it? We also want to know, are there any fixed costs that are avoidable? If I outsource this part, am I going to be able to use my machines or my space or my people for something else? We also want to know, is there something that I could do with the freed up manufacturing capacity? Once again, this is where we kind of look at our opportunity cost. Could I manufacture a different product for a higher profit? Could I lease my space out to someone else? Or will that space simply sit idle? Okay, and if we can utilize it, then we have some opportunity costs that we would consider. Okay, so let's look at two different examples with SmartTab, assuming that they want to consider outsourcing the casing that goes around their tablets. So if there is a situation where fixed cost cannot be avoided when we outsource, then remember, we only want to look in our differential analysis, we only want to look at those costs that are relevant. And if our fixed cost will not change, they will not be relevant to this particular decision. So the cost that will change is if I do not make this product, I will not have to pay for direct materials. I will not have to pay for labor, and I will not have variable manufacturing overhead. So these are the costs that would go away if I outsourced my product. And if I outsource my product, I'm going to spend $50,400 in purchasing it. So in essence, what happens is it actually cost me less in my relevant cost to manufacture this product than it does to outsource it. And this seems a little abnormal compared to what the information that your text gives us. On page 1398, it tells you that our total manufacturing cost for this product are $55,200, and that we need 2,400 cases. So this ends up being $23 per case. So originally we were thinking, all right, it costs me $23 to make the case. Someone has offered to sell it to me for $21. This is a no-brainer. Let's go buy the case. But the $23 per case takes into consideration all my cost. Okay, so this includes my fixed cost. So my total cost divided by the number of units. This is all of the cost. However, if I outsource, I can't get rid of those fixed costs. So even though fixed cost is important in determining my total cost per unit here, it is not important in determining what costs are relevant to this decision, the $36,000. So if my fixed costs would not change and there's nothing that I can do with my freed up space, then it looks like I might be better off to continue to manufacture the part myself. Unless it's, once again, qualitative, is it some specialized part that I'm outsourcing to someone else who can do it much better than we can? Is it worth a $14,400 increase in cost to do that? Our second scenario says, what if we can avoid some of those fixed costs? So once again, we're looking at costs that are relevant. What cost will change as a result of outsourcing? Once again, if I outsource, I will no longer have direct materials, direct labor, variable overhead. And the text says, what if we could get rid of $12,000 in fixed cost? So if this is the case, I can minimize my cost by $48,000. And so my outsource to purchase my case, from someone else at $21 a case, will cost me $50,400. So once again, I can only get rid of $48,000. It's still going to cost me $50,400 to purchase this from someone else. So still, it's a little better than $14,400, but it still is going to generate more cost to outsource than it is to simply make it ourselves. So even when we minimize some of the fixed cost, it's not sufficient enough to remove enough cost to justify purchasing it somewhere else. So when we're trying to make a decision about outsourcing, if the differential cost of making the product exceed the cost of purchasing it, then by all means we should outsource it. But if the costs that we can avoid are less than the cost that we're going to have to incur to purchase it from someone else, then I need to continue keeping it in-house unless there are some other qualitative factors or opportunity costs that we have not considered. So your presentation gives you a couple of alternatives. We can simply continue using our facilities to make the casings. All right, so if we back up and take a look at this situation, if I continue to use my facilities, it's either going to cost me $36,000 or $48,000, depending on whether I can remove any fixed cost, compared to the $50,400 it would take me to outsource. So I could continue to make the casings, or I can buy the casings. I can still outsource, and my facilities are going to sit idle, and I'm getting rid of $12,000 in avoidable fixed cost. So in this situation, as the last example that we looked at, if I am getting rid of some of my fixed cost, but if my facilities are sitting idle, then what am I really gaining from freeing up those machines or my space? Unless for some reason this company can do a better job at quality or delivery times than we can by manufacturing them ourselves. So the final situation was, we could buy the casings, and what if we can do something else with our facilities? It says, what if we could use those facilities to make a new product? And so the facilities that I have freed up now give me space and machine time so that I can manufacture a new product. So we once again look at, this was simply the cost of making my casings. This is the cost if I continue to make them and my facilities sit idle. But if I can generate some profit from a new product when I do have free capacity, then we have some opportunity costs that we're going to take into consideration. So in making the casings, it's going to cost me at least $48,000, assuming the $12,000 in fixed cost would change. If I outsource, then if I do not use my facilities for anything else, this is my total cost. If I outsource and I do use my facilities for a new product, then this is my cost. So notice what it says. We're not talking about profit. This is net cost. We're identifying the cost that would change as a result of this decision. So the cost that would change would be the $48,000 that I would save from not making. I would spend $48,000 making my part. I would spend $50,400 if I allowed them to make it for me and my facility sits idle, or I would spend $20,400. I would be out of pocket the net cost $20,400 if I allow the other company to make the part and I can use my space to manufacture a new product. So we have to take once again, all of the quantitative and the qualitative issues at hand into consideration when we're trying to identify which alternative is best, continuing to make the product or outsourcing it.